Here we go again with another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. I'm Steve Gamache, and this knife is the Fujiwara FKM-09 Gyuto 210mm knife. So this line of knives has a steel is known as AUS 8 or AUS 8, full stainless steel. It's a pretty easy to sharpen, reasonably good edge retention steel that's kind of tough and works great in professional and home environments. They heat treat this to around 58 to 59 Rockwell, which is somewhat conservative hardness, and that gives this knife some forgiveness. So it's a great introduction into Japanese cutlery. Excellent in a professional situation where you want a little bit of extra durability versus some of the harder knives. The construction is monosteel, so it's one piece of steel that's cut and then ground to shape. So there's no cladding or layers. The weight and dimensions on these should be pretty similar to one another the way they're made. This one's 181 grams or 6.4 ounces. Edge length is about 212 millimeters or 8.35 inches, measured from the tip around the curve of the belly or the shape of the edge to the back of the heel, known as the chin. The overall length is about 332 millimeters or 13.1 inches with the handle. And as far as the thickness of the blade up by the spine, coming out of the bolster, it's about 2.2 millimeters, and then I measured about halfway down, about 2.1, so it's pretty similar. And then when you get to, I don't know, 2 inches or so, you start to get a nice distal taper and the tip thins out, and you can see it gets pretty thin right at that very tip, the way they grind these. So the tips on these work very well. That's one of the nice features of this knife versus some of the other lines in the similar price ranges. They've got excellent distal taper grind to them. The height on this one's about 44 millimeters at the back of the heel, the chin. So with the handle being not super big, it's a comfortable handle. Fits the size of the knife, I think, as far as not being too big, too small. But you've got pretty decent clearance there for the cutting board, as long as you're not, bringing your knuckles way out or your hands aren't super big. So it's a pretty comfortable handle for a variety of hand sizes. The handle is made out of, the scales are made out of what's known as black paca wood. It's a stabilized wood product. And they've got nice fit and finish on the scales, the rivets, stainless steel rivets, the stainless steel bolster up here, and also the full tang construction. The handle, these are kind of known for their kind of round contours, so they're very comfortable, not especially blocky, just a good feel in the hand. They, with the full tang and the blade thickness the way it is, the balance point on these is just in front of where that, just about where that bolster slides in or, gradually goes into the blade. So that's where your balance point is. So it's a pretty neutral balance point. Let's take a close-up look at these. These are one of the higher value lines on the site. They just are consistently made to a pretty high fit and finish level and consistently made that way. The finish you can see is a vertical finish, machine finish, and you've got some etched kanji and maker symbol on there. The right side of the blade, which is this side of the blade as you hold the knife to cut, they've got a little extra polish on a little bit larger bevel. They've kind of thinned that out a bit, and on the left side of the blade, which is plain, you can see a smaller bevel. So I'd say the edge bevel is about 30-70, so 30 left, 70% right. I had no steering issues with this whatsoever, and I'm a lefty, so I wouldn't let that bother you at all. Out of the box, these, I'd give them a 5 out of 10. They had a pretty reasonably sharp edge. The edge was nicely crafted, but it wasn't like super duper sharp. You can definitely get it sharper. The grinds on these are fairly flat. They've got a little bit of convexivity to them. You can kind of see from the reflection, but they're a fairly flat grind. I'd say product food release is average. It's pretty much on par with a blade this style. Not great, not horrible, but just kind of average. About the only fit and finish issue with these, which is true of a lot of knives, even some more expensive ones, Japanese knives, is they could have the spine a little more polished on the edges, and also the choil is a little sharp on those edges. But 10 minutes with some emery cloth or strips of sandpaper, and you can clean that up nicely and make it more comfortable, if it even bothers you at all in the first place. Let's see. Cutting board, let's take a look at it. Let me get one quick beauty shot here for the website. So on the cutting board, this has just a good average profile. These are highly recommended frequently by professionals on the Chef Knives to Go forums site because they're just good, reliable knives. They're not too expensive. They can take a little bit of a beating with, within reason for their scope of use. They are Japanese knives, and they won't do things that some of the European softer knives will, but within reason, they can take a bit of a beating, and they're pretty easy to sharpen. The steel works well. It's not super edge retention, but it's respectable, and they just have a good workhorse attitude about them. They do blend into a professional environment. They don't look overly ostentatious or funky with hammered finishes and Damascus and wah handles and such, so they do tend to blend in if that's a consideration for you. Here is the profile, as you can see. A little bit of a flattish area in the back, nothing real super flat. It kind of smooths out into a heel area there, a little bit of back belly on the heel. They've got a fairly pointy tip, and the front rises a bit to that, so these will go pretty high on the rocking scale. So these are real nice rockers. They're a good transition knife from German knives or other European style knives because they've got a little bit of belly towards the tip, but they're a little flatter than some of the pure German cutlery, European cutlery. You can see that this rocks real nice. Not a huge flat spot for pure chopping, but it works really nicely for most other techniques. So it's a good kind of transition profile. So there's a lot to like about these. They've got good steel, nice fit and finish with the exception of the choil mainly, and just reliable workhorse design, good performers, not too expensive. So excellent package. So this is the Fujiwara FKM-09 Gyuto 210mm knife.